My guest this week is Rick Lewis, a radio disc jockey on 103.5 The Fox in Denver, Colorado for the past 30 plus years. He is also part of the Lewis and Logan afternoon drive program on KOA at 8:50 a.m. and 94.1 FM. On top of all of that, he is the Denver Broncos color commentator during the football season. You'll notice during this conversation there is a no fear theme that runs throughout. You'll hear the positivity in his voice. We have a great time talking about all of the things from his early years through college and working his way up through various radio stations. On top of that, he's a great drummer, and he is the leader of his band, the Rick Lewis Project. This was a fun interview for me. Rick has been a friend for quite some time, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Rick Lewis, man, how you doing? Glad you could join me.
Well, hey, good to see you too, Joe. As you can tell, as we were setting this up, I'm a borderline moron when it comes to this type of technology, so I'm trying my best.
Hey, that's what happens when you're a big shot and to have everybody around you taking care of the technology. You just sit back and put the headphones on and start talking.
Yeah, I need an IT guy at my house.
All right, well, cool. So I just wanted to start from the beginning and just, we're going to just do a quick overview of, where you started out. And so let's just dig into it, man. Everyone's going to know by the time we start talking, at least your bio and everything else. But, I want to start from the very beginning and get a quick synopsis of, where you grew up, where you were born, where you grew up. Start from there.
Okay. So is this the show, or are you going to edit this together?
This is it. We're going to.
Oh, this is it. Okay.
This
right.
is it.
Okay. Yeah. So I was born in outside of Detroit, Michigan, in a steel town, blue collar steel town. Great place to grow up. Just really, really good childhood. A lot of great memories. My dad worked for a chemical company there, and we lived there from the time I was born till 6th grade. And then my dad started moving around the country because he was kind of moving up the ladder in his company. My dad was the first guy in our family to ever get a college degree. And so he kind of broke the mold of generations of the family. And I really admire him for doing that because he had 5 kids. He was going to night school to get a degree. I don't know how he did that, but he did it. And once he got his degree, he started kind of moving up in the corporate world a bit. So middle of 6th grade, I moved from Detroit to Columbus, Ohio. Middle of 9th grade, I moved from Columbus, Ohio to Naperville, Illinois, which is right outside Chicago. And then just before my senior year, we moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. So we moved around quite a bit. I went to, I think it was 4 different high schools in 2 different states. And I think that, at the time was a little bit traumatizing because you're always the new kid. But looking back on it now, I realized that there were some good things about it that kind of molded me into who I am today.
Right. And from what you and I are friends and I know you a fair amount, but I have a feeling that you're a really good athlete, right?
I was a really good athlete. Yeah. Growing up, I always thought I wanted to be a pro athlete. And that was my dream. And that was my dream until I got into college. And then once you get into college with better competition, that dream was quickly shattered. And I realized that wasn't going to come to fruition. But so that was until I was about 19 years old, until I realized that, I'm a good athlete, but there's a lot better athletes than me out there. And it just wasn't in the cards for me. But yeah, growing up, we played every sport in Detroit, every sport throughout the season, hockey, baseball, basketball, football, and very, very competitive. We played a lot of sandlot games back there that were very competitive with some really good players. And it was really cool to be in that type of competition where you have a real sense of pride for your street or your neighborhood, and you're playing against all these other neighborhoods. And it got to the point where there'd be fights, there'd be a lot of people that held grudges, and that type of thing. And like I said, it was kind of a tough part of the country, with all like blue collar, people's kids that were really grinders and just really gave everything they did 100% effort.
Right.
And I was one of those guys.
I know. I know from your mentality that you aren't going to take any shit from anybody. So how did you get to NAU in Flagstaff? How'd you pick that school out of everything,
Yeah. Well, like I said, we moved around a lot. So I was a good football player. And the fact that we moved right before my senior year was not good for somebody that was hoping to move on and play college football and get recruited and get into a good football program, because it's hard to follow somebody, especially back then. Now today with social media, it's a lot easier to get your profile out there to college recruiters and coaches, but back then it wasn't. So the fact that I moved right before my senior year was a bit of a handicap for me. But I had a good senior year, and I was getting recruited throughout the state of Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky and places like that I wasn't really that interested in going to. A lot of smaller schools, a few mid-level schools. I did get letters from some other schools around the country too that were bigger, but I didn't have the confidence at that point to want to leave home and go halfway across the country to try to play at a bigger school. But anyway, NAU was one of the schools that did recruit me back then. I never even heard of NAU in Ohio. I mean, I'd never heard the name before.
Right.
So I ended up going to actually went to Miami University, Miami of Ohio, which was about, I think it was about an hour, maybe an hour and a half from my house. And the reason I did that is because I had a high school girlfriend that I thought, for me, it was more important that I stay close to home, so I could be around this high school girlfriend. And Miami of Ohio had a really good football team at the time. They didn't recruit me. So I just went there so I could be closer to my girlfriend. 3 weeks in, she broke up with me. And, the typical freshman story. And so I couldn't wait to get out of that school. I mean, I just I waited one quarter and I quit. And I came back home and tried to figure out what I was going to do next. And it was at that point that I think is when I would say I became a man at that point, because I had a bit of I guess you'd call it awakening or epiphany back then, as I was going through all of this pain, of this high school heartbreak. And I realized that I was blessed with a lot of things. I was born at the right time, born in the United States. I was athletic. I had some intelligence. I had some musical ability. And I realized that I had all of these skills that were already given to me, and that it was my job at that point to take all of these gifts and then try to make them better, try to enhance myself in every way and become a better person all around. And so once I had that epiphany, I decided that it was time to launch. And I remembered that NAU had recruited me, and like I said, I'd never even heard of NAU before, but Arizona seemed like a really exotic place to be, especially for a kid from Ohio. And so I decided that's where I was going to go.
And
I
what did
ended
you,
up,
yeah, and so what did you go there to do? Because it wasn't, you didn't go there for football, right? What was
yeah,
your major? Oh, you did?
did go there for football.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And I had no major in mind at that point. I was on a different kind of mission. I wasn't going there to learn or be educated out of a book. I was going there to experience life. And so the school part of it wasn't all that important to me. I had something else in mind, and that was just, um, finding out who I was, what I was fully capable of doing, challenging myself. And at that point, I would say I had no fear. I had no fear of failure. I didn't even have a second thought that whatever I did wasn't going to work, that I would find a way to make it work, and I would find a way to be successful. And I just, I could have done anything at that point. I literally could have done anything, but I didn't know what it was yet. But I had a feeling whatever I did, it was going to be great. And it was just this belief, just this faith that I had. So I went out there. The football was a part of the package, but it was really just to find myself. And the football part of it ended up becoming a very minor part of the experience out there, because I learned so much about myself and what I was capable of doing. And I had several majors when I was there. I could never find anything that really interested me enough in school, until one day at the gym, a guy told me that he had a show on the campus radio station. And he said, "You should come down tonight, and sit on my radio show." I'd never even thought of it before. And I said, "Okay, that sounds cool. I'll do that." And I went in there that night, and I really liked it. He put me on the air. And I ended up getting my own show. I had found my thing, basically.
Yeah.
So what I went out there for, with complete confidence that I would find, but not knowing what it was at the time, I did find it.
And how far was that into that college year? Or was it the first year, second year?
I want to say it was year 2.
Uh-huh.
And I was only there for 2.5 years. So I would say probably right after my first year, I discovered that, and then I switched my major to radio and TV. And like I said, I got my own show on the campus station. I knew I was good at it right away. I just found my thing, just like you when you found that you could play drums, right?
Yep.
You knew what your thing is. So I knew what my thing was. And so I also I was doing, I was like a club DJ. They had nightclubs and stuff back then, like disco kind of thing. And so I became a disco DJ, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And just once again, just developing my craft, basically learning how to talk in front of people, learning how to put on a show, learning how to present. And that was just giving me more and more experience for my radio TV career that followed. So after a year or so of doing that, a lot of people were telling me, a lot of people in Flagstaff were telling me yeah, my group of people were telling me, they were saying, "Rick, you're really good at this, man. You should go to Hollywood and you should try to get into movies in Hollywood." And I was thinking, yeah, you know what? I should probably try that. And so once again, going back to the no fear thing, that's what I did. I ended up quitting NAU after 2.5 years. This was after, right after the fall semester. So going into the spring semester in January, a guy that was driving California for a job, and I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money. I literally had $5. That's all I had. So I had no car. I had $5 to my name. Everything I owned, a pillowcase. I didn't have anywhere to go out there. I had no place to stay, nothing. But this guy that I was driving out with had a van. So I thought, well, you know, if I get desperate, I could maybe sleep in this guy's van. So I went out there, and I quickly got hired at a club out there in Orange County as a DJ. And not only did I get a job, they gave me room and board at this nice hotel, because the club was at a hotel. So I got a job, room and board at the hotel. I got a company car,
Jeez.
all my meals paid for, and all my laundry and dry cleaning. So it was like I hit the lotto, you know. And I remember I called my dad up when I got out there, because he was really mad I quit school. And I called my dad up when I got out there, and he goes, "So what are you really doing out there, son?" He goes, "Are you in the mafia or something?" He said, "No, nobody gives a 21-year-old kid a company car." I said, "Yeah, I know, Dad, but they did." And so I had that, you know, so that gave me some stability and some income. And I went out and got an agent, and this agent set me out on my very first audition was a movie called Fast Break, which was a basketball movie. Gabe Kaplan was the star of it.
Wow.
And I tried out it was a very minor role in the movie. Basically just had to play basketball. So once again, going back to the athletic ability that I had, right? So that was my tryout. And they went, "Okay, yeah, you got the part." So I worked 6 weeks on this film every day for 6 weeks. And it didn't pay that much. I still remember what it paid. It paid $75 a day. And at that point, I'd had a motorcycle. I rode a motorcycle to the set every day in LA for 6 weeks. It never rained one time. Lucky, because at that point I didn't have the car anymore. Because when I got this job, I had to quit the DJ job. And so that's how I had to get a motorcycle. Somebody loaned me money to get the motorcycle. Some guy just said, "Oh, you know, let me buy that for you." So once again, it's like everything was just meant to be for me. And so that kind of got me started down the path of trying to be an actor. The movie was a big hit. For those of you watching this now, you could still find that movie. It pops up like on TBS, like once a year they play it. At the time, it was one of the biggest movies of the year that came out, because Gabe Kaplan was a big star back then. He was coming from Welcome Back, Kotter to that.
Right.
And so
I'll have to rent it now so that I can, and I have to figure out if I can find you somewhere in the film.
You'll
Okay,
know.
cool.
Yeah. So
before we get past this point, though, I want to ask you what gave you the foresight to actually go and get an agent? How did that come to your brain to go, wow, I need to go get an agent?
Well, I just knew if if you want to try to get in, you know, some TV or movies, you needed an agent.
Okay.
And so this guy got me in quite a few things, mostly extra roles, but I did pick up. I got a couple of national TV commercials. I got a Budweiser commercial. I got a Marantz stereo commercial. I was in a ABC sitcom called Making It with David Naughton. You know, just a minor role. I beat him up in the show. I was like a tough guy in it, and they had to. They didn't think I looked tough enough. You know, I had blonde hair, kind of a surfer guy look, and so they sprayed my hair black with a spray paint out of a can. They sprayed my hair black to make it didn't even look like me. So I was kind of disappointed in that, because if you watched it and knew me, you wouldn't even know it was me.
Oh wow!
But a lot of cool experiences along the way.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's funny because you started out doing the radio thing, which is not in front of a camera, to being fully in front of a camera, and then come where we are today. Now actually you do both now, so it's kind of cool because you got the experience, so you're comfortable in both situations.
Yeah, and the way I decided to go back and to get into radio is this really was a turning point in my life. I was working at a liquor store, like all actors do. You're either a waiter, or you work at a liquor store or something like that. Something that gave you the freedom to be able to go out and audition and do whatever you needed to do. So I was working at a liquor store in Anaheim, right down the street from Disneyland. And it was a Friday night. And that night, a show that I was on TV. So I brought a TV in to the liquor store because I wanted to, obviously wanted to watch myself on TV. And in fact, it was that show, Making It, that I just mentioned, the ABC sitcom. And so I brought the TV in and I had it on the counter. And it was a Friday night on Harbor Boulevard in Anaheim, right down the street from Disneyland.
Yeah.
And a couple of guys came in and, put a 12-pack on the counter, and I'm busy looking at the TV over here. And I turned around, I said, "You want anything else?" They went, "Yeah, I think we'll go get another 12-pack." I said, "Yeah, that's great." And so I go back, I'm looking at the TV. One guy comes around behind me, and the guy in front of me puts a gun to my head. So they're obviously holding me up. Yeah. And so, you don't know how you're going to react in a situation like that until it happens. And everything for me just slowed way down, almost like slow motion. And I didn't panic. I was really calm. I gave them the money out of the cash register, but I knew that they had some marked bills in there. And if you pull these marked bills, that triggers a silent alarm, and the Anaheim PD comes, because if you're getting robbed, that's what you did. I didn't want to give them those bills because I knew that the alarm would trigger the police to come. And I thought if the police came, these guys would either hold me hostage or kill me. So you could see how clear I was thinking. Mm-hmm. So I didn't give them the bills, and they said, "Give us all the bills, MFer." And so I pull them out, I threw them in the bag, and now I knew that the cops had been alerted. So they're trying to get me to open the safe. I couldn't open it. I said, "Hey man, I just work here. I don't have the combination." And they said, "Open the safe." And I said, I can't, man. I just work here." So they said, "Get in the back room, hands over your head." So I'm walking back like this. And that's when I thought, well, I might be in trouble now. And at the same time, I'm still thinking, man, I hope nobody comes in that front door, because they'll probably kill me. Even the cops, or if the cops come, they'll hold me hostage. If somebody else walks in, they probably kill me. This is a Friday night in Anaheim. Nobody comes in. So then they told me to lay on the floor, hands over my head, like execution style. I'm doing that. And they're still trying to they found a crowbar, and they're trying to open the safe. And so they couldn't get it open, and they finally realized they better get out of there. And they told me to count to 100 before I got up. They had to step right over me to get out. And I'm thinking, they're either going to kick me in the head, shoot me in the back of the head, who knows what they're going to do. Right. Well, they didn't. They stepped over me and ran out the door. I counted to 3 and I ran out the door because I wanted to see if I could catch a license plate. But they were on foot, so they got away. And as I'm standing in the parking lot, 5 cop cars pull up. And at first they thought that I robbed the liquor store. And I quickly explained to them what had happened. And so anyway, long story short, they never caught the guys, but the next day I got called into the corporate office. It was a U-totem. I don't know if you remember U-totems. They became Circle K's.
Okay.
Yeah, so a corporate liquor store. Mm-hmm. And I got called into the corporate office, and the guy sat me down, and he goes, "Well, you got robbed last night." I said, Yeah. He goes, "Well, you know what? They got a lot of money." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "No, they got like $227." I said, "Uh-huh." Yeah. And he goes, "That's a lot of money." And I said, and I was probably 23 years old, 22, still just a kid. And this guy's got his suit on and everything. And I said, "Have you ever had a gun pointed at your head?" And he said, "No, I haven't." And I said, "Listen, man," I said, "I would have carried the safe out to a fucking car." Like, that's a quote. I quote unquote, I told him that. He goes, oh, no, I understand. I totally get that. But he goes, we're going to have to let you go.
Oh my gosh.
I got fired. I got fired for being held up. And I said, why would I give up my life for a minimum wage job? I said, I would have given them anything they wanted. He goes, no, I get that, but we can't have you work here anymore.
It's
I don't
amazing.
know. I still don't know what that was about. But I ended up realizing that I should probably get into radio. That's really what I was born to do.
Yeah.
The acting thing, it wasn't my thing. And so I ended up going back to school at Long Beach State because they had a really good radio program there. And I had a year and a half to go to get my degree. And I got a degree at Long Beach State. They had 2 broadcast stations on campus, broadcast into Long Beach. It was a great experience. I did everything from a DJ shift to a sports talk show to I was a news anchor, and I did play-by-play for the Long Beach State football, baseball, basketball team. And so I got a ton of great experience.
Wow.
Yeah, it turned out to be really, really good.
That's amazing because I got on the radio at my college and I got the shitty 4 to 7 a.m. slot or something like there were only drunks calling in and telling me to play this and that, and I'd get in trouble because I wouldn't stick to the playlist that the program director gave me. So yeah. So that's good.
I didn't know you did that.
Oh yeah. It was a disaster.
Yeah. Well, I got to do everything, but keep in mind now I'm a little older. So I'm probably 23, where everybody else there is 18 and 19. So I was more experienced. I've been around. And so I really, I don't want to say I was the best guy there, but I probably was, and so they utilized me any way they could. And it just turned out to be great. In fact, I'm not bragging, but I got nominated as outstanding graduate of the program.
Oh,
and
cool.
This is, and me, a guy who never cared about school. I mean, I could care less about what I could learn at school, or at least the classroom part of it. But once I got into radio, it was just my thing. I got straight A's. I got a 4.0 my last year and a half, without really even trying. And when that happens, you found your thing. You found what you're supposed to be doing. Just like I mentioned earlier with you playing drums, same thing.
Yeah. So now you found it. You found what you love. You got your degree. You excelled in it. How if we can just cover quickly the brief stop-offs at the different stations around the country that you got work at, and then finally landing in Colorado.
So I graduated in June. I sent out tapes for. To be a DJ, and I also sent out sports tapes to do sports talk or be a sports reporter because I liked both, and I didn't, I thought I'd end up in sports, honestly, like to be a sportscaster, but I didn't want to limit myself, so I sent out both, and I got hired in August. 2 months later, I got hired at a radio station in San Clemente. So in the market still, right on the beach. It was pretty cool. The money wasn't very good. I still remember what I was making back then. It was $1,200 a month to do mornings at this station in San Clemente. But I wasn't in it for the money. I knew what the goal was. I knew that the money would come at some point. This was just all about getting reps, as they say in football, building up my chops. I knew I had to build up my chops. I didn't come out of college, a good broadcaster. I came out of college, a green professional broadcaster with a lot of potential. So I totally saw the big picture, and I knew I just had to get reps, and every day you get better and better and better, just like playing an instrument. You just got to play it. And, anybody can crack open a mic and talk on the radio. but it's the years of experience that really, fine tunes what you can do, just like playing drums or playing any other instrument.
Yeah.
So San Clemente, I was there for a year and a half, and I started getting noticed by some of the bigger markets like San Diego. They had me working weekends in San Diego at a radio station down there. In fact, they offered me the morning show down there. And that's a whole nother story. I kind of blew that one. Boy, I don't know how much time we have, but
That's up to you. Listen,
yeah,
I will stay here as long as I have a lot I want to cover. But if this is a
yeah.
great,
Well,
but if this
okay.
is a great story, because the story with the $5 and the pillowcase,
Yeah. Well, anyway.
I had never heard. So that was a great story.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was. I learned a lesson talking to fans that would call the show. A lot of times when records are playing, you'll kill time talking to people on the phone. And I happened to mention it to somebody who happened to call down the morning show guy at the station in San Diego and tell them, oh, by the way, I heard this guy in San Clemente, Rick Lewis, is taking your job. This guy's, what? He went to the boss, told the boss called me, goes, what? Who did you tell you had the morning show here at the radio station? And so anyway, he said, I can't hire you. He said, I had to deny it. I'm not going to be able to hire you. Anyway, that's a short version of the story.
Oh, man.
But so from there, from San Clemente, I ended up getting hired at a radio station in Anaheim after about a year and a half in. And it was quite a big step up. It was a union station. The money was really good. I had probably more than tripled or quadrupled what I was making. So I was there for just a week, and they changed the format. I got fired a week into this job, and it was, like I said, it was a pretty good step up. And like I was thinking, how did they not know that they were going to change the format a week ago when they hired me?
Right.
It was pretty devastating. And so once again, I'm starting over. I ended up sending tapes out. This time I'm sending tapes out into LA. 3 months later, I got hired at the biggest rock station in LA, and probably the biggest rock station in the country. Some of you may remember KMET, the Mighty Met. Those of you from LA certainly remember KMET. So one door closes, another one opens. I ended up like just jumping over the mid-market, radio station right up to the very top. So in a year and a half out of college, I'm working at the top rock radio station in the country. It was named Billboard Magazine's major market AOR radio station. And so this was like a dream. It's unbelievable. I was the youngest guy there. They had legendary radio personalities there. And just a blessing for me. Yeah. And I'm not the most patient guy anyway. I don't think I was ready for it, to be honest. I still had a lot of growing to do as a radio personality, but that certainly accelerated it. And then once again, the pay was 2 or 3 times more than what it was going to be in Anaheim. So in a year and a half, I just I shot right to the top of my field. And you're probably thinking, well, you didn't pay your dues. I guess maybe you could look at it that way. Like I didn't have to go to a lot of shitty markets and grind it out for 10 years before I got the opportunity. But that's just how it happened for me. But I never took it for granted. I never took it for granted, because going back to my blue collar roots, I would call myself a grinder with talent. The talent's a blessing. The grind part, that's on me.
Yep.
I had nothing to do with the talent, but the grind part's on me. And I always thought that a grinder with talent is the person you would want to hire, because that person is going to take what they got and they're going to outwork everybody. and they're just going to get better and better and better. And so that's kind of how it happened with me. So there I was in LA. Oh, you want to know how I got to Denver?
Yeah, well, now
Okay,
I want to know how, because that's where we're going to get into more of this other stuff. So,
yeah, so I worked in LA I started in 81 at San Clemente, and I worked in LA till 1990, so 9 years. I also worked at Power 106 in LA, which is still a big powerhouse radio station in LA, because I ended up getting fired from KMET twice. Yeah.
Twice.
2 times. Yeah, one time I just signed a 3-year deal and they fired me 3 months later. They pulled the plug on the whole radio station. This was in 1987. They became the first smooth jazz radio station in the country. They pulled the plug on one of the greatest, if not the greatest, rock radio station ever. Turned it into smooth jazz, fired us all. So that's the 3rd time I've been fired now since 1981. So I went and I realized then that to make the really big money and the biggest impact in the business, you got to do morning drive radio. So I stepped back down to that radio station in Anaheim that I was at early on in my career and started doing mornings there. And I did mornings there for 3 years and got fired again. So for no reason, you get fired in radio, not for doing anything wrong. It's usually a turnover of upper management, middle management, format changes, that kind of thing. So, So now I've been fired 4 times since I started in 1981. And it's really hard to get a job in radio. Every time you get fired, you think, oh, I'm probably never going to get hired again. Because it's really hard to do. And I had so many chances along the way there in LA where I almost hit like the big time. Like I got asked to guest host PM Magazine, and I crushed it. I mean, I killed it. They called me later. They said, "Hey, we're thinking about making you the national PM Magazine host." And I was probably about 26 years old.
Wow.
27. And I was like, yeah, cool. So they said, we got to get a reel. We got to get something more than this to show people nationally. Come on down. We'll do some test roll. And that day, I got stuck in traffic driving from Orange County to Hollywood. It took me 2.5 hours. I didn't know then that I'm hypoglycemic. So my blood sugar just tanked on the way down there. So I got there, I did the audition, and I was flat, totally flat. And I knew it. It was not a good audition. And the guy pulled me aside. He goes, "Rick," he goes, "what happened, man? You crushed it when you guest hosted the show." He goes, "This just wasn't very good." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I know." I said, "I just not feeling it today." He goes, "I can't show anybody this." And I said, "Well, can we try it again?" He goes, "I don't know." So anyway, I blew that one. Dick Clark called the radio station in LA that I was working at. Somehow he had seen me somewhere, and he said, "Hey, I want to meet this guy, Rick Lewis, one of your radio people." They gave me the message. I call back. They set up a meeting with me. I go to Dick Clark Studios in Burbank, and I never met Dick, but I met his right-hand man. We had about a 90-minute meeting, and he told me that they were going to develop a bunch of shows around me. And so, of course, at this point, I realized not to get your hopes up in Hollywood or in show business, because a lot of times it just never happens.
Right.
So I was feeling good about it, but I didn't get my hopes up at that point. And I'm maybe 27 years old, 28. I already knew better than to get my hopes up. And so we had some conversations on the phone after that about different shows and different show ideas for about 3-4 months. And then they went dark on me. Nothing ever happened again. I never heard from them again. So anyway, I had all these near misses or near hits along the way. And so in 1990, a radio guy in LA named Fraser Smith. And once again, anybody from LA would know that name. He's one of the legendary guys out there. He was from Detroit, and he told me, he said, "Hey man," he goes, "I just got offered $500,000 to do mornings in Detroit." And this was in the 80s. So translate that into today's money. That's
Right.
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
He said, "You can make big money in some of these Midwest towns doing mornings." I went, "Really? Okay, it's good to know." So I contacted a guy that I knew in our company that I still work for. And they offered me an afternoon show back in Cincinnati, which is where I used to live. I thought that was too big of a step down in market size. I turned it down. A station in Detroit told me that they were very interested in hiring me to do a show there. And so I went back and, interviewed. I took my life back. We were looking at houses and neighborhoods. Never happened. And anybody that's in show business, and Joe, you've been in the entertainment business a long time. You know that this is just how it goes.
Yeah.
All of these big things get dangled, and then most of the time they don't happen. But I knew at that point that, I'm ready to leave the market if the right opportunity came along. So the guy who offered me the job at Cincinnati got back to me, and he named off about 3 or 4 other markets that they were willing to hire me in. And Denver was one of them. And I'd never really been to Denver before. And he said, "Hey, we got this comedian named Floor Wax. He's really funny, but he doesn't get the radio business. He doesn't understand it. He needs a really good partner to make it work." He'd already had a show here in Denver. He was on the air with another guy. And he said, "The station's losing money. They're not ranked even in the top 20. But he said, if you can go there and turn it around," he said, "you can write your own ticket." And I kept thinking back to what Fraser Smith told me about how this could all work out financially. So my wife and I flew out, and we liked the city. I thought it was worth taking a chance for a year. Once again, back to no fear. I left the LA market. And I, by the way, I did get, after getting fired there, I did have another radio show, another radio station I was working for back there. So it wasn't like I was unemployed. But I told my wife, I said, even if this only lasts a year with Floor Wax, we'll go somewhere else, meaning me and Floor Wax. And we'll keep going somewhere until it hits. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that what we had was really special. And it ended up, here we are 30 years later. I'm still doing the same radio show. It's unbelievable. And it's been just an incredible run. And I'd never take it for granted because of how I started my career, getting fired 4 times in the first 9 years. I wake up every day just counting my blessings. And I also realize it doesn't matter how good you are, how big you are, how much money you make, they could fire you in a second. And I've never taken that for granted.
Yeah, I know that about you. I know that you're grateful every day for what you have and what you've accomplished. And that's why this is a special interview for me, because we think along the same lines. And that's what they say, right? You are, what is it? The quote is something like, you are the sum of the 5 people that you associate yourself with or hang around with or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And we all attract, the energy we put out, we attract that same energy.
Yep.
And so that's how you and I became friends.
Yep.
You kind of attract who you are or what you put out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you get to Denver and they get rid of this other guy that Floor Wax is with, and you step in and you guys create this Lewis and Floor Wax show that was on the air for how many years?
Well, Floor Wax and I did 23 years together.
Okay.
And then, unfortunately for Floor Wax, he had a mental health issue, and he ended up quitting the show.
Yep.
And he's been gone ever since. So he's been gone for 7 years now, and the show continues to go on. The show is still very successful. big revenue maker, big ratings. It's amazing. I can't believe it's lasted this long. I really can't.
Yeah, and that must have been a lot of pressure right when that whole thing happened where Floor Wax was going away. You were still handed the show to say, let's keep it going, make the best of it. And I'm sure at that point, everybody's eyes were on you going, okay, can he pull this off without having this secondary person with him on the air to exchange that banter with and all that other stuff? And I know listening to it after that it just kept shooting upward. It just was amazing. And still
Yeah,
is. So.
I kind of thought maybe it was over here in Denver when he had left. In fact, I hired an agent outside, I had a New York agent, a national agent, thinking that I would probably be looking for another job. And I looked at it once again as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, all right, this is the universe telling me, hey, it's time to move on. Floor Wax left in January. And by that summer, the radio show was #1 in the morning. And so then the company was coming back to me talking about a new contract. And so it ended up working out where they signed me to a new contract. I don't think they thought it was going to work. I think they thought the show was over, and this will be it. I think everybody was surprised, including myself, but I ended up retooling the show, kind of reinventing myself. I looked at it as an opportunity to just get better. I had a band with Floor Wax as well that was real successful. I looked at that as an opportunity as kind of a rebirth, and the approach that I took, and it took a lot of work. It was a lot of work with the radio show and the band to get it actually to the level we were before, and in some cases even better.
Right. So the timeline is you start with Floor Wax what year?
1990.
And then it ends January of what year?
Well, 23 years later, so that would be 2013 is when he walked off. Yeah.
Okay. And you picked up, man. You it's amazing. So I know that the list could be huge, but let's just, for the sake of keeping it condensed, I know just a few times that either you invited me into the studio when I've been in town, or I've listened to it from being in Arizona. What's the top 5 most famous people you either interviewed live in the studio or remotely on like call-ins over the phone? I know it's ridiculous because the list is probably hundreds.
You know what it is? That's a really hard question to answer.
Did any of them make you nervous? How's that? Maybe that would pinpoint somebody like being really over the top, well known.
I've literally interviewed almost everybody you can think of.
I know.
Even when I was in LA, I worked for Westwood One, and my job was to go to do probably 7 to 10 interviews a week of either movie stars or rock stars,
right,
singer-songwriters. So I was interviewing 7 to 10 people a week for a couple of years out there. I interviewed everybody. When somebody's new album would come out, I'd go meet them at a hotel and in their hotel room, and interview them. So it's all kind of a blur, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
If you started naming names, I could tell you, oh yeah, I could tell you a story about it.
Yep.
And that Westwood One gig did make me a really good interviewer. Or it made me really know how to interview people and how to listen to people. Right. Instead of having a list of questions, and you ask question number 7 off your list while they're talking, you're already looking at question number 8. You just got to let it flow, and just go with the conversation, because a lot of these people, they're not that comfortable being interviewed.
Right.
It's not their thing. Now, some of them are great, like David Lee Roth. That's a guy I've interviewed many times. All you got to do is turn the mic on and let them go, and just try to guide it, and try to, hopefully you get from point A to point B to point C without losing your license. Guys like that. Ted Nugent, same thing.
Right.
Ted Nugent, you just let him go.
Right.
But you try to guide them, along the way. You try to get what you want out of them. Guys like that are really easy, but a lot of them, they really have very little to say. A lot of these, rock stars are somewhat introverted. Movie stars, really introverted. Movie stars, you take away a script, they don't have a whole lot to say.
Yeah.
They're always, they're going off, everything they do is off a script. And you've seen some of these guys on the talk shows. It takes a really good interviewer, a Jimmy Fallon, a David Letterman, guys like that to bring them out. And so you learn how to do that. I have so many. I really.
I know. It's a bad question.
we could do this for hours.
I know. All right. So now you are currently on the Fox 103.5 on weekdays from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And you've been doing that alone since the spring of 2013, correct?
Since January of 2013.
January 2013. That's when Floorwax left. Okay. So on top of that, you recently, I say recently only because in this industry, a couple of years is still recent, but is it true that you're the color commentator for the Denver Broncos?
This is true, Joe.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I just didn't want to get it wrong. I didn't want to say, and just for the audience sake, because even though I watch a shit ton of football, I didn't really understand what a color commentator was. So if you can quickly, explain what that means, because I don't want to give it the wrong description.
Okay. I've been doing play-by-play, which is a different role, for a long time, going back to when I was in college. I'd been doing play-by-play of high school and college games I got back into it at least 10, maybe 12 years ago. And I was working for Comcast here in Denver doing games play-by-play.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like this whole thing of being at the booth was foreign to me. So 4 years ago, Ed McCaffrey was the color commentator on the radio on the Broncos flagship station. Ed McCaffrey, great football player, Denver Bronco legend. And he, for some reason, had to miss a game. And so my boss called me like on a Tuesday, and he said, hey, Ed can't do the game Sunday in Jacksonville. What do you think? You think you can do it? I was like, yeah, I can do it. No fear.
Right.
Now, I'd never been a color commentator before, but I understood the role because I'd done play-by-play so much. So I prepped for it really hard and did the game, and it went really, really well. And so much so that I thought, if Ed ever decides he doesn't want to do this anymore, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and see if I can get that job. And that happened. The following spring, Ed McCaffrey decided that he wanted to spend more time with his kids. He's got, at the time, I think he had 2 kids in the NFL and 1 in college. Christian McCaffrey, his son, is one of the best running backs in the NFL. So he decided he wanted to watch him play more and didn't have time to do this. So I did get the job. And so the color commentator is a different role than play-by-play. The color commentator has a very short window to try to color up the broadcast. Now, keep in mind, this is radio, not TV. Mm-hmm. It's different on TV. On TV, you don't have to explain what happened because everybody can see it. On the radio, you have to paint the picture. And so the play-by-play guy will tell what happened on the play, and in some cases even break it down. And then I have about maybe 10 seconds in between plays to say something that he didn't already say that actually adds something to the broadcast and moves it forward and kind of resets the next play.
Right.
And so it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. I always thought play-by-play was easier. I still do. I think for me, play-by-play is easier to do than the color role. So it was a bit of a learning curve on it. But I really, really enjoy it because it challenged me for the first time in a long time. Not only with the prep that's involved, and it's a lot of prep, but the speed of the broadcast um, is is such that you really got to be on your game because it's
Right.
moving really fast and you got one shot. So it's like you're Nick Valenda, when you're on a tightrope walking across a canyon. There's no safety net.
Yep.
You got to be on your game. You got to be super focused, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, and it has to be this super delicate balance between knowing when he's actually done saying what he's going to say in the play-by-play, and where you guys aren't constantly stepping on top of each other, and then there's room for the next play to come in or whatever. I hear it. I'm baffled at how it gets done so cleanly.
Yeah, and my partner Dave Logan is one of the best in the business. He's up in the upper elite 1% of play-by-play guys in the world, and so the fact that he's so good, of course, he could cover up any mistake that I might make, or if I stub my toe a little bit, he can completely cover it up in a very smooth way, which I'm sure he's done for me many times, to make the broadcast sound good. The fact that I've been in broadcasting so long, well over 30 years, 39 years, that I'm able to make a broadcast sound good. I figure out a way to make it sound good. And so that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just as we're talking about this, see how I stepped right on top of you. See, it's like, so, is it true? And I don't know if where I heard this, but is it true that you are the only broadcast person doing these NFL games that is not an ex NFL player?
Yeah. On TV, I don't think there's anybody, certainly I don't think there's anybody doing NFL games on TV that wasn't a player.
Mm-hmm.
There may be one on the radio, but I don't know who that would be. There's only 32 teams. So you got 32 broadcast teams doing it on radio. I don't think there is a guy doing color that didn't play in the NFL. Most of the play-by-play guys are guys like me that are broadcast, guys, experienced broadcast guys. We kind of flipped the formula in our broadcast because Dave Logan played 10 years in the NFL. So you got a play-by-play guy that played 10 years in the NFL. Yeah. And then me being a broadcaster that I know the game, I understand the game. I played a little bit of football myself, so I totally get it. But it's pretty unique.
And you're having to do, what is it, eight away and 8 home?
Yeah, 8 home, 8 away, and then 4 preseason games. So 20 games a year. Last year we did 21 because we had the Hall of Fame game.
Right. And what's the most grueling conflict with the morning drive time show now, with you having to do the football games? What days are the hardest for you? Is it Mondays because of the Sunday game, or?
Well, if we play a game like on a Sunday night or Monday night or a Thursday night on the road, I don't work the next morning on the radio because we won't get in until 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning. So I take the morning show off. I do two radio shows a day. I don't know. I don't think you're even aware of it, but
nope.
I'm doing 2 live radio shows a day. So I do the morning show on the Fox, actually from 6 to 9 a.m. Then from 9 to noon, I do a talk show on KOA, which is the Broncos flagship station, with Dave Logan and Kathy Lee, who's on with me on the Fox show. So I'm doing 6 hours of live radio a day.
God, I had no idea.
Also pretty unheard of in a major market.
Yeah, I had no idea that you were doing that extra stuff. I had only known about the morning show. So wow.
Well, this is why you don't hear from me much anymore.
I know. This is why I'm excited that I have you right now, and I can't let you go until I get through a lot of this stuff. So let's bounce over to, you and I have this mutual kinship in playing drums. So when did you start playing? And we skipped over it a little bit when you're talking about you and Floor Wax and having your band, which was the Groove Hogs. and now you have the Rick Lewis Project, and you run the band, and you and I have this same sort of leadership role in our bands. But when did you start playing drums?
Yeah, I started playing drums at 17, I believe. I had played piano when I was a little kid, like classically trained, lessons, piano recitals, all of that. I probably played piano for about 3.5 years. I never liked it. My mom was kind of forcing it on me. I would have much rather been outside playing, football or baseball or whatever. And so that was always the dilemma for me. And I was pretty good, and I picked it up pretty quick. You'd read music and all of that. And then she finally, she gave up and said, "Okay, you can quit piano and do whatever you want." I'd always wanted to play drums. I was always interested in drums, but my mom and dad would never get me even a snare drum. Nothing. We had 5 kids in the family. We didn't have enough money to go out and buy me a drum kit. So I just kind of put that on the back burner. But at 17, somehow my younger brother got a drum kit. I don't know. I don't remember how it happened. Maybe my mom and dad gave it to him for a Christmas gift or whatever. And I started playing drums at 17. And I realized right away, like, I can kind of play these. And so I really took a great interest in it. And I played along. I'm self-taught, as you know. Played along to records, put headphones on and just play the songs. And so I learned how to play. I think I learned how to play musically. I never took any lessons. And so for me, I play like the record, because that's how I learned how to play. Right. And like I always tell people, I don't have chops. I have a chop. I got one. I can play a song. I can play a groove. Right. That's all I got. I can play a groove, but
you have more than that. Trust me. I've seen you play.
I don't. But I played until I was 21. When I went to NAU, we'd go to the music room, me and a bunch of guys, and we'd jam in the music room. I remember I played once at a country bar in Flagstaff. It took a lot of beer to get up there to do that, but I did it. And I just loved it. But then when I moved to LA to be an actor, I quit playing drums. And I didn't pick up a pair of drumsticks again until I was probably 40 years old. So almost a 20-year span of not playing drums.
Wow.
And then when I was 40, I got interested again, and I bought myself a drum kit and started to try to get up to speed. And we formed a band pretty soon after that. That was the Groove Hogs band. Mm-hmm. And with the connections I have here in town, I was able to hire the best musicians around here. And it was a pretty good band. And because of who we were on the radio, and Floorwax was in the band too. Mm-hmm. Because of who we were in the radio and the high profile that we had, we were getting really good gigs. The first gig we ever played was at Red Rocks. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I know, it's like, man.
Yeah, we opened for the Doobie Brothers and CCR at Red Rocks, and it was just amazing. And I was working as hard as I could to get back up to speed, just practicing every day. And having had no formal training, it was strictly just instinctive, trying to get better. And once again, just playing the music, just trying to play songs.
Yep.
For some reason, I got a really good natural feel for song structure.
Yep.
It's so that's a gift. And being able to play drums is probably, it might be my favorite thing I do right now is maybe playing music, which is saying a lot because I do a lot of really cool things.
Yep.
The Groove Hogs got to play big shows, man. We opened for ZZ Top and James Brown and Leonard Skinner and Ted Nugent and Def Leppard. We got to opened probably 7 shows at Red Rocks.
That's
We opened for
amazing.
The Who at the Pepsi Center. That was amazing. Back in 2007 or 8, it was The Who and the Pretenders, the Pepsi Center. So we played some really good gigs.
And you do it
So,
right too, because you have a drum tech and I don't. So you just roll up with your stick bag on your shoulder and you're like, I'm here.
yeah, yeah. The whole breaking down the drum kit thing and
Oh,
on it, that's the big downside of playing drums. But luckily for us, the band gets paid pretty good for doing these gigs.
yep,
And I can afford to pay my band members really well.
yep,
I've told you,
yep,
they get paid really well. And so I can also afford to have a drum tech
yep.
that can do all of that for me as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not in it for the money, believe me.
No,
This has nothing to do with money for me, playing music.
no, I know. And it's too bad. I know right now it's like a kind of a tough question, but you guys are still doing local gigs around town. Like when we get on the other side of what's happening now, with COVID-19, you guys will be out doing, your normal festivals that you normally just play, like festivals and things, right?
Yeah,
You're
we
not,
have my new band, the Rick Lewis Project, started in 2013. So 7 years in already. And once again, hired the best musicians around here. And we played some big gigs too. We've opened for Leonard Skinnard and many other people like that.
yeah.
We did a show with Ziggy Marley. I mean, we were the only non-reggae band on the lineup and pulled it off. We ended up switching like 4 or 5 of our songs into reggae songs.
Sure.
I'd never played reggae before, and we pulled it off. And it's really, really cool. But yeah, we have a residency at a casino here so that we can play anytime we want, pretty much. So we play there about every 6 weeks. In the summer, we play a lot of festivals, and we do still support some big acts. We got a show in August with Government Mule on the books. Hopefully we'll be able to play it,
Oh, cool.
that type of thing. And others. I mean, we were just in the process of really rounding out our schedule for 2020 when all of this coronavirus hit.
Yep.
Hopefully we can come out of it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think we will. I think by at least July, I would think we'll be able to start playing live shows again, and people will be able to start going to concerts again. I'm optimistic about that, but
Yep.
who knows?
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. So this is something I don't know if I've ever asked you or we talked about, and I only have a few more things, so I'm not going to keep you much longer. But if you had the opportunity, with all you know about music and all the musicians you've made and all of the conversations that you've heard, if you had ever had the chance to become a professional touring drummer over being the radio personality that you are and all of that, would you ever have chosen that lifestyle?
Wow, that's a good question.
I know you love performing in front of people. When I watch you play, I'm like, you are so in your element doing it. And you're a great front man when anytime that I've jumped in behind the drums and you've run up to the front of the stage, like, you're a great front man as well. So I just was like, man, I wonder if he ever goes, God, if I had only started that earlier and my path had taken me that direction.
That's a great question. I have no regrets, but I do think that looking back on it now, I wish I would have focused more on music than sports, because sports was my whole world back then.
Mm-hmm.
And now I realize that for most people, your athletic career is over after high school. And if you're lucky, after college. Very, very few get to play professionally or make a living out of playing sports. Looking back on it now, I wish I would have stuck to the piano. I told my mom that recently. I said, I wish you would have forced me to continue to play, just to establish, that side of me.
Yeah.
I wish, and I did discover drums young enough at 17 that I could have been probably a pretty darn good drummer by now. Good enough to tour with a big band. I don't know if I put enough work into it to be that good. I think I have what's inside of me to be that good, but I haven't put in the work. Because of everything else I do. I wasn't a guy that could sit down and play drums for 10 hours a day, which a lot of guys do. You might have been one of them. I was a guy who could sit down and play drums for an hour a day. And so that's what I did. Excuse me, my battery's starting to get low. And so that's what I did, for, 20 plus years. I would play for an hour a day. That's all I had time for, with a family and an established radio show and everything else that I was doing. But boy, you know what? If I sometimes say, man, if like Earth, Wind and Fire would hire me to go out and tour, because I love playing funk music.
Yeah.
That's my thing. If I could be the drummer in Earth, Wind and Fire on one tour, man, it'd be hard to turn that down. It'd be really hard to turn that down.
Yeah.
But a lot of musicians, a lot of these successful musicians that we all know and love, they've had a lot of hardships along the way, and a lot of it's drugs and alcohol. Almost every one of these successful bands goes through that. You know what? I don't know, man. I don't think I'd change anything.
Yeah.
Look at my friend Danny Seraphin, who was the drummer from Chicago.
Yep.
Longtime drummer from Chicago. And I just watched a documentary on the band. I think it was on Netflix. And drugs and alcohol. Once again, Terry Kath ends up killing himself. Maybe accidentally, maybe not. But you watch every documentary on Netflix about these successful rock bands, it's drugs and alcohol that takes them, almost all of them, down.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be worth it to have to go through that type of thing. But
yeah,
I did take one lesson on drums, and that was Danny Seraphin. I told you that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a
Danny
sweetheart.
Seraphin, Danny Seraphin came. This is my basement right here that we're sitting in. Danny Seraphin came over and spent a weekend, I think, or 2 or 3 nights at my house. And I got 2 drum kits set up in my house. And he goes, "Hey man, let's go down and jam a little bit." He goes, I want to see if I can help you. And I was pretty intimidated, but once again, no fear. So we sat down and we played together for like 90 minutes together, side by side. He'd play a lick and I'd try to copy it. Then he'd play a groove and I'd jump in on it. And then he showed me a couple things. And after about 90 minutes, we stopped. He said, "You're a good player." And this was a long time ago. This is probably almost 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
He said, "You're a good player." He goes, "But I can tell you don't have, he said, "I can tell you don't think you're a good player." He goes, "You should know you're a good player." And he goes, "You have good time." He said, "You have a great sense of time, great feel, and great groove." And he said, "Take that with you every time you play and realize that every musician wants a drummer that has those 3 things.
Yeah.
Time, feel, groove." He said, "You got it." He said, "Believe me, that's what all these guitar players want, is a drummer like that." He said, "They don't want drummers that are playing all over the song and doing drum fills, every break." And he said, "Take that and be confident that you have that." And that really helped me a lot. So that one lesson from Danny Seraphin really meant a lot to me. And it gave me the confidence to, be myself.
Yeah.
And play like I do, which is my one chop. I've got
Doesn't matter. It grooves. It feels
I
great.
got the one.
No, that's all right, man.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next for Rick Lewis? What's anything that is super exciting that you can talk about? Or, I know you got a shit ton on your plate. I don't even know how you sleep. But just wondering if there's anything new you wanted to talk about before I let you go.
I've gotten really good at living in the moment and living in the now.
Yeah.
I really don't think that far down the road. I don't live in the future very much. And so I really just take it day to day, and especially what we're going through right now, in the world. It doesn't, I mean, we can only just live right now.
Yep.
You know, what I have right now, I have everything I need right now. Everything is good right now. If you start thinking too far down the future, too far down the road, it gives you anxiety because you can't control it. You know, fear, anxiety is fear-based. And so I've got a very, very busy schedule. I'm right on the front lines here, being on the radio, doing 2 shows a day, talking about COVID-19, trying to give people, you know, a feeling of hope and optimism, a diversion, a form of entertainment that can take their mind away from all the bad news, and just trying to do the right thing. You know, like I said earlier, this is what I was born to do, and I'm doing it at a very tough time in history right now. I'm optimistic it will get better, and I truly believe it will. As far as me personally, I just want to stay healthy. I want my family to stay healthy and keep doing good work, no matter what it is. I'm blessed to be able to do a lot of things at a very high level, from playing music to doing 2 radio shows a day to calling the Denver Broncos games with a legend like Dave Logan, and just trying to be a better person. You know, the way I'm looking at this this situation that we have right now is we're being called to use this to be better people. You know, there's a portal that we're all going through right now. We're all going through it together, and we need to rise and shine. We need to be better. So when we come out the other side, we're better people, and the world is better. And that's what I'm focused on right now. Just trying to be the best I can be every day. And as hard as this is, I want to make sure that I'm a better person when we get to the other side of it. So that's what's in the future for Rick Lewis, just being a better person.
Cool. Well, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you doing this. It's an honor to have you on the show, and thank you for agree to do this. Take the time away. I know you're busy as hell. Can you just once again give the 2 shows that you do and the times so that everyone knows?
For anybody interested, you can listen outside of Denver on the iHeartRadio app, which is free. I do a morning show 6 to 9 Denver time on 103.5 The Fox. That's kind of a more of a raucous, entertainment-based music show. And then from 9 to noon, I'm on KOA, which is a big, giant AM radio station that's the home of the Denver Broncos and the Colorado Rockies. And it's more of a news talk format. We do kind of a lifestyle show. Now, during this, you know, coronavirus thing, pretty much all we're talking about right now. I do that at 6 to noon. Denver Broncos games are on the Denver Broncos radio network. They're on, you know, hundreds of radio stations once the season starts. Also on Sirius XM, you can hear the games on there. My band, I've got a band Facebook page. It's Rick Lewis Project. So go to Facebook and look up Rick Lewis Project. I've got a whole slew of performance videos up there from shows going back years. You'll get a good idea what the band's all about. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the number one, Rick Lewis, if you're interested. And right back at you, Joe. You know, you've always been a source of inspiration for me too. You know, you're a great drummer. I'm just a decent drummer, but you know, I wish I could play like you. And I look up to you not only as a drummer, but as a man. I see what you're doing. I follow you on social media. I see what you're trying to accomplish. We're a lot alike in many ways, and you are a grinder with talent. You know, just keep doing what you do.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. I love you, and stay healthy, and we will talk soon.
Love you too, Joe. Thank you.
Brother.